G'day folks, in this video I'll show you how you can solve this 𝙏𝙃𝙈𝙕𝙆𝙎 Master Mixup version 3. Now 𝙏𝙃𝙈 put out versions 1 to 7 of these puzzles and then version 0 later on. And these stickerless puzzles were from the second run, so I picked them up. I did have black puzzles years ago, but I sold them off. I decided to buy some of these again. So there's no sticker issues, which is one really good thing about these. And I'm going to be taking you through how to scramble this puzzle as well as the bandaging on it. So on this version 3, we have all centerpieces being 1 by 1 blocks. It's sort of similar to the version 1. It's similar to the version 7 in some respects. The version 7 looks like this, except it has 2 by 2 blocks, a single block for every center. So the version 1 has the centerpiece is the same, but all of these bits are 1 by 1s. So it's a little bit comparable to a couple of them. All the outer edges here are 1 by 1s, all the wings are 1 by 1s, and as I say, the only part that's the 2 by 1 is the inner edge pieces. So as usual, there's orbits of pieces. So if we turn this in, being a 30-degree mix-up cube, we turn that in, we can see that the outer edge and the wing share the same orbit, and the inner edge and the centers share the same orbit as well. So initially I assumed that because this was like version 1, but the inner edges were done already, it should be much easier and quicker. Well, it's certainly true that there's no need to pair those inner edges. So on version 1, we would have to pair the two little bits that make that up beforehand. But the fact that they're already 2 by 1 actually presents a few challenges. So overall, it's probably comparable time-wise to the version 1. The big difference is there's no catching and there's no locking up on this puzzle. So in terms of scrambling it, the first thing I want to do is just do 180 sort of turns, and I want to try and deal with these centerpieces primarily. That's what I'm looking to do initially. Let's just get a bit of scramblage going on there. Not heaps, just sort of enough to, in fact I said 180, but you can do 90s, that's fine, because the structure will retain, and that's a good thing. And again, when you're relatively happy with what's going on, it doesn't have to be perfect by any stretch. But when you're happy with it, move on to the next little stage, and it's the main stage of the whole scramble. We're going to use essentially a middle layer, and we're just going to do something like move one of these things in, and I will do a 180 turn and put that back, maybe move another one across, just get everything aligned, do that sort of thing. Put the edges back. I do like to keep the outer edges in position. It makes it quite a bit easier to sort of see what's going on. And we can do this, put the outer edge back there. Now, obviously I can't do 180s, but I can sort of be turning this as I do it. And I can do 180s of the outer slices, which is the sort of thing that I'm aiming for. Now, as I do this, what you'll notice is that some of the edges start getting quite scrambled. So for example, you can see there's bits in here that are looking quite good. And what I'm trying to do is get to the point where there is an entire portion of an upper and a lower big edge. And I'm nearly there, so I might just see if I can, get, say, one of these done. That's no good. That just brought back a red thing, which I don't particularly like. So I'm going to have to put that back in a minute just to keep the structure. Okay, let's keep those there. And that's just about good enough on that big edge. Perhaps we'll just, in fact, you know what? It's good enough for now. I know those two red pieces are there. That's okay. This is essentially a scrambled big edge. When I've got one of them, I'm just going to bring one from the top or bottom down like that. And I'm going to keep scrambling and keep going. I'll just start with that new one, just do the same sort of thing. You might be wondering, is it essential to keep the outer edges in these positions? Well, no, it's not. And in scrambles in the past, I've accidentally not kept them in that position. That's by no means the end of the world. It just makes it a little bit easier to see, oh, yep, that's been scrambled and it's time to, I can remove that one. I can keep this other one in the mix. And so I prefer to do it if I can. And so, for example, now I could turn that around. Here's another big edge, which is pretty much done. And perhaps we could, I don't know. Wonder if that'll help. Yep, that makes a better edge there. So that's cool. I can now bring this one down and it's very clear to see what still needs to be done. So I'm just going to keep working my way through that until all of that stuff is scrambled. Now, when you've got most of that done, you'll find that by and large, this stuff is scrambled in here, but a lot of things like the outer edge and the wings here are not yet done. So all we want to do now is separate those. So now we can sort of afford to lose the structure a little bit. Now we can do this by 180. So this green part here, that can be turned off and then turn that back. And I'm not really concerned about the structure because all I'm really worried about is separating those things. However, if I want to keep a middle layer turnable, then I do need to consider that. So as an example, I can separate, let's see something that does need to be separated. This red white with a little white wing in there, I can turn that and I could just do a 90 degree to turn that off. Now the problem with that is that's fine, except now it's changed the orientation here and I can no longer turn that middle layer. So it's probably not a bad idea initially to do 180 degree turns when you're separating those things. And again, as you're separating them, you could look here and say that contains almost, I'll just get rid of that green one. That now contains on that big edge, nothing that belongs next to each other. So I could replace it with one of these and continue. So that's what we need to do now. And when that's mostly good, or at least as good as you're happy with, then it's essentially time to just go a bit crazy. And we can now just be doing 90 degree turns, 30 degree turns. Of course, there's no separating any middle layers anymore. It's just everything as you wish. A 30 degree here, a 30 degree there, and keep going till you're happy. It probably won't be that long, to be honest. You'll just be looking at it going, well, I've got things that are oriented every which way, and you can see there's no real structure to what's going on. Just a matter of lining things up. And here we are at the point where it's probably time to start the solve. Everything's looking pretty nicely scrambled and probably nothing's where it should be, so that's good. So at the first stage of the solve here, and this is where there's the first difference to a version 1, is that we need to orient all the pieces. And you saw it in the scramble that we kind of had to keep a middle layer to keep things moving around. We need that here in order to do anything. So what we want to do to orient the pieces is everything's, let's just call this the middle layer, and we want everything in here to be horizontal. So if I see something that's not, like that vertical one, I'll move it into the middle, and I want to essentially turn that face. So I'll just turn it like that to make that horizontal. Generally, what I'll also need to do now is put back the edges that were here, because otherwise I'm just going to keep going over the same things. So to put back the edges, it's a down, down, up, up to put back the top one. And then this one goes back here. So it's an up, up, down, down. And those same edges are there. So anything that we had oriented is remaining oriented, and that is now correct. So I'll just move along. What else can I find? There's one here. So you'll notice that I went a front anti-clockwise and then a front clockwise for the first down, down, up, up. I would normally just skip those two and just go down, up, up for the first lot, and then do the 4 moves over here. Okay, that's done. There's another vertical bit here. one more, and that may be it for the middle layer at the moment. And you'll certainly know that it's it because it will separate. That's a good first little stage. It's certainly not the end of the orientation, because what I want is to have all the other parts on these other 8 edges oriented as well. So if I see an edge up here where bits are not oriented, for instance this one, and I can tell because I'll turn it down like that and suddenly I've got a vertical piece. These are fine, it's that's the issue. So I will turn it down with a down, down, up, up to put it onto that middle layer, turn that piece across into the center, and then orient the center. And this is why I want to be putting back the edges there as well. Now sometimes you'll do it and that'll be fine. Sometimes something may come out on the back as well. It doesn't matter. Eventually everything will be done. This is fine. This one's definitely going to have some verticals. So I just want to bring that down and keep doing that until all of the edges around the whole puzzle are oriented in the same way. And at this point, I've got everything. I've got a splittable middle layer, and any of these edges at the top that I turn down here is going to also be splittable. So that's good. That's a nice little stage. And it means now I can start getting on with the main part of the solve. The first thing I want to do is get all of the outer edges into the outer edge position. And the first 8 are generally relatively straightforward. Perhaps the first 7, the 8th one can often be a little bit of a pain. The last 4 are a bit trickier. So what I'm trying to do initially is use this middle layer and just say, well, there's one here and there's one here that does not contain outer edges in those wing positions. That's good. I'll put them together and that will be my first outer edge, and I'll turn it up there using sort of at least 3 turns just to keep this turnable. That's what I'm aiming for. There's an outer edge with no wings. Let's search for another one. There's one that's there, which is on the same line, I think, as this one here. So what I could then do is turn this around just to basically separate things. There's another one. You can see the first few are fairly straightforward. There's one on its own. What I would probably do is just keep turning this and see if I find one. There we go. That's a good one. Now, which one needs to... That's done. That's done. That's done. Okay, so this needs to come down. So by the looks of it, that's 4 that are now done. So I'll just sort of put these on the bottom face and continue for now, as long as I can doing that. That's not on its own. There's one that's on its own, and there's one on the other line. Okay, so that's good. That's 5. Now there's a couple here which is sort of leads towards some techniques for the last 4, but one thing I can try is just turning these off, which is good, and then I can place those 2 back into that outer edge position. That should be 6 if my numbers are working today. Apparently they're not, because it's 7, unless I've taken one from the bottom. I have taken one from the bottom. Okay. So I'll just go and grab that, put that back there. So 4 on the bottom, 1, 2 on the top, so we are on 6. Now, again, I could try something like this. It didn't help with that one. It hasn't really helped with that. Okay, let's actually do a bit of proper thinking here. You can see the problem is there's heaps of them that are together. And that's not really what I want. I've got one that's separate up here. So what I notice is that I've got another one in this edge that's landed on the bottom. If I could get this one onto that edge position there, it's on its own. So that should be a sensible thing to do. So I'll put that into that edge position on its own. This one can now turn across, and there we have another one. So that should be number 7. And as I said, the 8th one can sometimes be a little bit tricky. There's 4 there. There's my slot for the 8th. Let's see if we can just do it normally. There's one on its own. Yeah, there's none here which are perfectly on their own straight away. In this slot there is one on its own, so I might try the same. I may try the same thing. Let's see how this works. Bring that down. This is the one that was on its own, I think. So if I bring that across to there, that's lovely. Okay, so I have made the 8th one. Let's put that up into the top. So what I should find now is that on the top, all of the outer edges are in their position. Note that I'm not trying to pair them. I'm not trying to go white, green, just get them in their position. Now, we come to the middle layer. We're obviously far more restricted. So the first thing that I would do is just turn and see if I can get a couple of matches. There's 1, 2 straight away. So that may be really good. And I note when they're like this, that if I turn this around to the other side and then return the middle slice, this one will go into that position, and so will this one at the back. So straight away, I've got 1 there and 1 there. Okay, that's good. Clearly the problem is I also have outer edges in the wing position. So just some techniques here that we need. The first little thing that I could try next is I've got a spare slot here, and I've got 1. Yep. Okay, I like this in that position. That's a nice place for it to be. I'm going to put this one in a similar position over on this one here. So to get it over there, I just want to turn it 30 degrees and flip this big edge. When I flip it, this piece will go to the top right to be precise. And the reason that's good is because I turned the bottom slice. So I turned the bottom slice back and it doesn't affect that. Now, I said that I liked that one there. What I'd like is to get this one into the middle. So if you have one on a side position or a wing position and you want to get it to the middle, you just turn it across 30 degrees into the middle and flip the big edge. And then what did we turn? The top face, so we'll turn that, or the top layer. Now, this is in the big edge. Oh, it's in the middle edge, the outer edge position. I'll speak English rather than gibberish. Now, the reason I said I liked that one is as soon as you've got 2 in an outer edge position, what you can do is push one out with the other. So I'll push that one out, flip this big edge, and anything that's in an outer edge position, when you flip your big edge, will come back to the other outer edge position. So it was on the bottom, it's now on the top, I believe, if I've got that right. Now, I wasn't even concentrating then when I was doing that, so I may not have done that properly. I reckon I've lost concentration. Let's try that again. I'll do it here. I'm going to use this one and I'm going to push this one out. This is on the top. It'll remain on the top. This one will go to the bottom. It's one thing that I'll probably learn one day is to concentrate while I'm doing stuff. Okay, when I bring the top back, you can see that's made another pair in there. So at the moment, we've got 1, 2, 3, and I've got 1, 2 pieces on their own. Well, clearly I need to get those 2 over to here. Well, the first main step is to get one of them into that layer, and it doesn't really matter which one. So for now, I'll just move this one across like so. And I can't keep it moved across because it moves these out, so I want to flip this big edge to put it down to the bottom. Okay, then I'll turn that back. All right, so this is on that one there. Now, the next thing I want to do is flip this whole big edge to put the other single piece up to this position near it. All right. Now, when I have two pieces that are separate, what I want to do is have each of them in the corresponding position. So this is on the upper left position, the wing position. I want this piece to be on the upper left wing position. So to get this piece over to there, you can see that all I need to do is flip this big edge. So that's a nice little setup, because when I have two pieces like that, here's how I get them to go together. The first thing is the piece that is close here, that is right across from it, I push that across into the big edge. Let's push the other one out for now. I'm going to now flip this whole big edge. It's done. I'll move that top layer back to put these back, and you'll notice that when I do, it now has the two pieces that I want together. Now they're in the wing position, so here's how I can get two pieces in the wing position to the middle edge position, or the outer edge position, I should say. Just move one of them across into that position and flip the big edge. Now I turned the top layer, so I'll turn that top layer back. You can see that those two are now exactly where they should be. And in fact, all of the outer edges are in the outer edge position. That's a pretty important little milestone there. I've got a turnable top layer, so I can make things like this or break them as I wish. The next stage of the solve is to attach inner edges to outer edges. Now on the version 1, these would not be 2x1 pieces. Everything that I would be looking at would be 1x1s. There'd be no 2x1s at all. So what I had to do on the version 1 was bring two pieces together, two little pieces together to make one of these, and then attach it. So here I've got a couple of issues. One is that I don't need to do that. I don't need to pair them first. I still need to attach them in the same way. And so here's how I do that. Firstly, I want to keep this middle layer as the middle layer, and I just want to find something that's in the top or the bottom, as it were. Now, at any time, I can do this. If I've got a bunch of pieces here and I'd like them to go to the top, I can just do that. And this middle layer will still turn as long as the top and bottom pieces there are turnable, are oriented correctly. So if I had the bottom layer like that and I tried the same thing, I've broken that ability to turn. So it just means that I need to keep that bottom layer in the same orientation. So here we go. Let's have a look what we've got. I've just try and find one that's going to work. Okay, I've got the top here, I've got a yellow piece which is pointing upwards, and it's in the bottom of the two layers. I want to get a yellow outer edge to this position here in the bottom of the two layers on the right. If it's pointing upwards to the right, I want to put this on the right. Now you can do this on the left, whatever. I just do it on the same place all the time, which is like this. Now what I'm going to do is the same sort of thing that I did on version 1, which is to move this bottom layer across and then move the inner edge and attach. Now, what you'll notice here, straight away that I've done that, something's wrong. I can't turn that back as I want. So let's just take that off and see why that is the case. When I turn that in, this one also comes in. So what is attaching to that back one? Well, it's this back center, just in the same way as the top center comes down 90 degrees to here, the bottom center comes up 90 degrees to this back one. Now, look what happens when it does that. It's not oriented. And this is why I was saying this is one of the key differences with the version 1. You set things up in the same way, but before you do it, you just check, is the bottom layer correctly oriented? Now it is. So now I can go bring that outer edge towards the center, move the inner edge down, and return. And because I made sure that these things were oriented, when I return it, it's successful. The next thing I would just do and say, right, here's a yellow one. It's on the top. So down here, I'm looking for a yellow outer edge on the top. I've got one. That's ready to go. Let's check the back, the corresponding position on the back. It's the upper layer to make sure that it hasn't already been done. It hasn't, so that's good. And the last thing is to check that the bottom is correctly oriented. And you'll get used to it because you'll think, well, if I turn that up, yep, that's splittable. So that's fine. So everything's looking good here. So now I move that piece in, move its attachment on, and return. And that's it. It is a very, very simple process. However, there's like a million of them to do. And so it does take a fair bit of time. So I'm certainly not going to go through all of them. Let's have a look at one or two more. There's a red one here. So I would look to find a red outer edge in the bottom right. There's a red outer edge in the upper left. So I would just turn that around to the bottom right. Put that in position. Check the bottom. That looks to be oriented correctly. Check the back, lower layer. Now that's done. I don't want to break that. So I'll just rotate that face around to put something there that is not yet done. Now I'm ready to go. There we go. So the only other thing to think about is I've already explained what to do if there's no pieces in top and bottom. Just move some from here. I can't imagine that you would get to the point where there's no pieces available. In fact, I don't think I've ever had that happen. So it's just a matter of working through these until you get to the only tricky part is right at the end when there's like one left. So I will continue with these and come back in later on. Well, here we are, and we've got two remaining. We've got a red one that belongs in there. I've got a green one that belongs in there. And what you're hoping is that they are on the same line. But what I'm trying to find here, I've got that set up. I need something on the top layer at the back. And the only spare slot is on the bottom. So these two are separate things. I've got to treat them separately and essentially forget that this green thing even exists. So I'm down to one left with this red one, and I've got to do something slightly different to get this placed. Otherwise I'm going to go around in circles. So the first thing that I want to do is get another red one in the upper position on the back. So there is already a red one in the upper position on the back. That's good. The extra thing that I need to do is get a third red piece in the corresponding position, because what I'm going to end up doing is turning this up like this. So where that blue is, I need to get a red piece there. So what's the easiest one to get? Probably something from here. So I'll just turn that around. Okay, so the setup should now be complete. I've got this piece ready to place in there. I've got a red on the back position, and I've got another red in this top position. So that bottom red doesn't matter. It's just the top position one. Now, again on the version 1, the sort of thing that we would have done is before we did this, we would have turned this off to the side. But the problem is because it's a 2x1 block, it just blocks everything. So instead of doing that, before we do this, because I've got one piece and one spare slot, I need to create a second piece and a second slot. I'm going to just turn this second slot out of the way for a minute. That brings the other red piece up. Now I'm going to do the standard move. So I'm going to turn that across, bring my red piece down, and put it in. Now hopefully you can see why I needed that third red piece there. When I put it back, it means that is okay. I now have one piece and one slot, two pieces and two slots. So now I've got exactly what I need to be able to finish this off. So the first thing I would say, well, let's set this up. So the red is now here. I've got to do the same thing with the back. And so the red is in the upper position on the back. And now I need this pointing towards it, that centerpiece pointing towards it. So when it comes up, it'll place correctly. Okay, so we're all set up. Now that we've got the two pieces, I place that one on the front. That one has come up from the back and placed correctly there. So that is the first red piece. Now, got another option here, or another opportunity to do the same sort of thing with the green. This time the green is on the bottom layer. So the first thing is get a green on the bottom layer at the back. There's that one. And get a green in this position on the bottom layer. Well, there's one here, so let's just turn that around. I think that should be okay to do that. Yes, 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 yes. Okay, we're ready to go. So before we start, we turn that slot up next to this. And now, proceed. And that's kept that one there. Piece in a slot, piece in a slot. That's good. We can now turn it back. Align everything correctly. And finally, go and place the very last of these pieces. So you can see it's just a little bit of thought and setup required, but the move is precisely the same. And that has completed the attaching of all the inner edges to the outer edges. Well, the next stage of the solve is to solve the wings. And this will essentially reduce the whole of this piece here once I have the wing solved. Again, there's about 1 million of these to do. So I'll set up and show a couple. What I'm looking for is a raised wing in the lower left position of any face. And it doesn't matter, I can move anywhere I like now. And in this case, I've got an orange raised wing in that lower left position. That tells me that I would like to put an orange base in the lower right position. So there's a base here that I could use. Let's see what else I've got. I'd like to choose something that has a different color and has a raised piece if possible. That may not be possible. No, I don't think it is. So I will just, for now, I will choose any orange base. Oh, in fact, I've got one here, but it's got the orange in. So that'll do. Okay, so what we're going to use here is the corner piece series for cuboids. And that is essentially an upper face turn and then a right two. So if you think about a cuboid, you can't, like a 3x3x4, you can't do a 90-degree turn and still turn your upper face. And that's what I want to do here. I want to do an upper turn, but of course my upper turn is going to be my upper slice. And then instead of doing a right turn, I'll be doing right two. That's the plan. So the piece movement, I've got these two little pieces here, and the third piece is the piece on the back that comes to this position. So if I follow that around, I see it's on the upper position on the back face. So at the moment, it's that little red piece. Now the other thing to know with this piece movement is that the two pieces on the front will change their orientation. So this orange piece is raised, it will flatten when it goes to there. This orange piece is raised, it will flatten when it goes to the back. So at the moment, I'm going to have this one place into there correctly. I'm going to have this orange piece place into the orange base correctly. That's good. I'm happy with that. I'll take 2 out of 3 any time. So when you've got the pieces set up, the algorithm is really simple. It is the upper slice turn, so a U plus, then right 2, U minus, and left 2. And then we repeat that. We're done. See, there's the orange that's been done. There's the other orange And that sets us up for the next one. So this is a red raised piece. So I'd like to find a red base. So I can just turn that up. That has an orange raised piece. So I'd like to find an orange base. And that one there, I'll turn that around. That goes into exactly the right position. Now to get 3 done, I would have to have an orange base with a green flat piece to go here. Probably doesn't exist. Oh, is that in the right? No, it's not. So this is an orange base with a green flat piece, but it's going to go to the bottom, not to the top. I thought we were on a winner there. So I don't have one of them, so I'll make do with what I've got. The pieces are set up and I'll get at least 2 done. I mean, in this case, I'll get 2 done. And this is now the next piece that I can deal with. Now, on a puzzle like this, you're probably always going to have a raised piece, but maybe not. And so what do you do if you don't? If you're all flat, you can't have a raised piece here going to there. So what you then do is think, well, the piece on the front left has a piece coming to it from the back, which retains its orientation. So I'd really like here a green flat piece on the back in that position. So I'll notice here there's a green flat piece. So I'll just turn that around, and I don't really care what goes here as long as it's something else. That will do. So in this situation, I just want to get that green flat piece into here, and I'll worry about the other stuff later. Now, of course, if this green piece is in a white base, of course, you could look to put a white raised piece in that position, because that would also get you 2 pieces done. And I reckon we can do that with these here. So now we're going to get that green piece to happen, plus this white raised piece will go in place in the back there. And we're done. It's probably the last turn there. And we just continue. And another 999,000 to go. I'll cut back in with the last few. Now we're down to the last 2 of these wings, and we've got a white raised going into a white base. And that white base has a blue raised wing. So this blue raised wing needs to go into a blue base. And the thing that we need to come up to here is a flat blue piece. So we're clearly looking for a completed blue piece that we can put into that position. Here's one here that'll flip over and go exactly where we need it to go. And so we've got everything set up now to complete these last pieces. And they're done. And that completes the solving of the wings. And we now have a situation exactly like a reduced 4x4 cube. So we've got all these centers in the center position. We've got these edge pairs that we can go make. And there are no surprises whatsoever with this. It's an ordinary 4x4 solve. You can still get a single flipped edge and 2 swap corners and all of that. I won't go through that in this video. I would recommend, if you want some help on that, have a look at my 4x4 tutorial. But as it is, before you know it, you'll be down to a solved 4x4 cube, and therefore a solved Master Mixup version 3. So I hope that's been helpful, and that is a nice little puzzle, probably slightly ahead of the version 1, purely on account of it just doesn't really lock up. I think we had 1 lock up there. It's pretty unusual for me, but there it is. That's the Master Mixup version 3, and as always, thanks for watching.